Welcome back, F11 members, to part 2 of the Fundamentals of Post-Production Video Tutorials for issue 83, December 2018. By the way, in part 1 I think I said issued 82, but I'm sure you'll forgive me. So I've got another autumnal scene on the screen here from a shoot I did when those last colours were hanging on in the landscape just a couple of weeks back. And I'm now going to talk you through the processing of it. The wind was blowing really quite strongly when I was stood on this hilltop shooting Corton Denham. The light was gorgeous, but it was fading on me as I shot, so I was really rushing to get this picture done. I've exposed for the landscape and didn't have time to get a filter on the lens. I used a polarizer, but as you can see, the sky looks pretty much devoid of detail, and yet the sky was full of drama. So my challenge now is to pull that out. So let's start with the post-production, and I'm in the develop module here, and I'm going to look at my black and my white points firstly. And what I'm going to do with this picture is do two different conversions from the raw file, one for the landscape, one for the sky, and then merge them using layer masking in Photoshop subsequently. So first of all, just ignoring the sky and looking at the landscape, I'm going to look at the overall brightness and contrast of that area of the picture. I adjust my white points to suit in the landscape so that I've got no clipping taking place there. Ignore the clipping at the top of the frame. I'm just looking down at the bottom. I move my white point slider to the right there. And now I'm going to do the same with my black point slider there. I can't go very far before I'm immediately losing detail down in the very bottom of the picture there. So just to fine tune there. And now I think, generally speaking, it's looking pretty good. I think I just want to brighten it up a touch. So I'm going to come down here to my tone curve and just put a bit of brightness in there, and then pull the shadows back so that I've put some contrast in as well. I think that looks pretty strong. Not much more I need to do there. Maybe just a touch more of vibrance, go up to plus 12. And let's see. Yeah, I'm going with that. So next thing, I'm just going to open that up in Photoshop now. So if I go library, various ways I could do this. I like to actually export the image so that I've got the interim TIFF to go back to should I need it. So I'm going to choose where I want to put it. If I go pictures, images, processed. This is just a temporary folder. Okay, choose there, and I'm going to put it in a subfolder called November 2018, because that's now. I'm going to rename the image to call it Corton, because that's the village of Corton Denham down there, but I'm keeping the original file name in the name as well. I want to open it up as a TIFF. Color space Pro Photo RGB. Again, that's temporary, but for now, that's what I want to work in because it's got the biggest gamut. And I'm using a bit depth of 16 bits per color channel. Okay, and I now go to export, and when I export it, I want to open it in Photoshop. So I've clicked on that, and here we go. So there it is. And I'm going to go back into Lightroom, okay, and come back to this image. And now what I want to do is go back on to where I started, come back to import, and just process this image, ignoring the landscape, but just concentrating on the sky. So hold down the Alt key here, move my black slider to the left. I ignore the clipping taking place in the landscape. It's just the sky that I'm concerned with. And Now, you can see this little red dot up there. That's showing because I've got this box here clipped, so my highlights are being displayed. If I click that on and off, that shows where I am clipping my highlights. So, can I retrieve that is the big question. So I'm going to use the highlight slider to pull it back, and it has done, which is really quite impressive. Just shows you the amount of leeway you've got in a raw file. Be aware though that highlights that are over-retrieved, if that's such a word, can look pretty ugly. You get to the point where you're just putting a false, dingy grey tone into a burnt-out highlight, so that's clearly not something I want to do. But now let's just pull back the exposure on the sky. Oh, it's a wonderful sky. Good skies make a picture, don't they? And you can see that drama coming into the sky there, wasn't it great? So I'm going to go to about that kind of darkness there, and now I'm going to use a grad tool here, and I'm going to pull that down from the top and just then use my exposure on the grad tool. Now if I go too far it looks very, very obvious. Let's go for a very soft grad here. That's way too much on the exposure. Fine tune it, click on the actual numeric value to the right, and then I can use my up and down key to actually adjust. Sometimes it's easier than using the slider. I think that's looking about right to me. I'm going to go for 0.29, 0.3 call it, and just make sure I've got a really nice soft grad there. Click on done, and now I'm going to export that and go through the same process. I'm going to open this up as a TIFF in Photoshop. And what's really interesting with pictures like this actually is that you know, I really should have used a grad, but there are times when the light is so fleeting that you want to capture it, that you haven't got time to mess around. And really the dynamic range in the image and that the RAW was able to capture means that I can pull back the sky. So it's instances like this which really do illustrate how I'm using grad filters less and less. So what I've got now is the sky, the image for the sky open in front of me, and I'm going to bring in in fact they're both open here. If you can see, there's that one there. This is the finished image actually, so I'm going to close that. So I've got the sky image and I've got the landscape image there. So what I'm going to do now is use my action here to select, cut and close the top picture, the dark picture, play that action, and now I'm just going to paste it on top of the other using an action as well, and there it is. If now let's move my actions out now, bring my layers palette in, so there you can see what I've got is the dark one laid on top of the bright one, and because they're converted from exactly the same frame, the registration is perfect. The wind was blowing and buffeting the camera quite a bit here, so I used a fast shutter speed. I raised the ISO to about 400 if I remember rightly, to enable me to get a really sharp picture. Okay, so the easy thing to do now is just using my lasso tool, is just make a really rough selection where I want the sky layer to appear, basically along the skyline. Select that, bring in my actions again, and I've made these actions to create a layer mask. And the numbers down here refer to the degree of feathering, how soft this edge is going to be. And I want a really soft edge actually, so I'm going to go with mask 500, which means a 500 pixel softness edge to this selection. So I just play that action, and there is the layer mask laid on top of the other one, and it's not bad, but I need to fine tune things. I think you'll agree. It doesn't quite gel, doesn't quite look proper, look bona fide. So I'm going to select my background layer now, and what I want to do is just darken down the top section of the landscape so that the merge between the sky and the landscape is a little bit more believable. So I'm going to use my lasso layer again, and I'm going to come along this line around about here. Select that. I'm working with my background layer. So if I go up here to Image, Adjustments, Curves, and bring my Curves palette in here, and then this is just going to darken down. I forgot to do something. I need to feather that selection before I go any further. And again, I want a soft edge. So I'm going to go for a feather radius here of 400 pixels, still pretty soft. Play that selection. Okay, let's just take that out of the picture now. Now I go Image, Adjustments, Curves, and I'm just going to use that curve just to darken down that portion of the image. Sort of top part of the landscape there. That works pretty well. The point of doing this really is just to give it a more natural look, so that the transition from landscape to sky looks natural. Click on OK there. And look at that image. Now what else do I need to do? Not much, quite frankly. Deselect there, and I'm pretty much there. And I think you can agree, compared to the original raw file, that looks pretty amazing, particularly because of that wonderful sky. A really basic use of layer masking here. You can see I've now got this these two layers here. So at this stage, when I'm happy with the picture, I'd now flatten it. Again, I've got an action to do that, or I can just go up to the dialog on my toolbar here, but actions are so useful. So that's not my action, that's my history palette. Here's my actions palette. Bring this in, and there you can see is my action for flatten. Okay, so layer masking is so useful. A technique to master. We've done it many times before, and we'll do it many times again, I'm sure. So that's it for post-production video tutorials this month, but do have a look at the field trial this month, because it's not shot in the field, it's shot here in my office at an F11 members request. I'm just going through the advantages of using a graphics tablet for your post-production. Okay, do send in your suggestions for what you'd like to see in future editions. We hope to hear from you. Thank you. Where's my thing gone? I wasn't recording.
No.
Oh, bloody hell. Yes, I was.